Hello everyone and welcome. Today we will be talking about USSR and Sovco Armored. This is a kind of a direction away from the ranked 1v1 decks, but I really like Armored, of course. My name is Patton. I originated playing a ton of Armored decks, and this is just my love. I love tanks, I love playing with tanks, and maybe I can show you guys some things about USSR and Sovco that you might not have noticed, and maybe some reasons to take it, possible changes in the future in terms of balance changes, suggestions, additions, stuff like that, just me freeballing. So this can be a nice little podcast. You can listen to this while you're playing, whatever. I'm just going to be looking at units in the armory. So yeah. Also, on a side note, if you are interested in any of the skins I'm using, I have a ton installed. I think I have like every possible mod skin can find installed. There's a couple ones I have that are private that I can't really give you access to, but the rest you can find on the modern modding forum, and I'll put a link in the description below for that. And also I have these sweet Patton icons that my buddy Rasman helped me out make. So shout out to Rasman. But on to the deck building and the decks. So when we're first looking at Armored for USSR and Sovco, there's some differences between the two, because Sovco you get a little bit of additions in terms of just line infantry, not too much in terms of AA, really nothing really. But the big addition when you're playing Sovco is you get another card of T90s, which T90s are great. I think everyone here likes T90s. I love them, of course. They do have their downside. They're good super heavy. They're not the best and they're not the worst. So yeah, you get an additional card of T90s, and I guess you could say that you get some more T72s and stuff like that. In Recon, you really don't get much of an addition. Vehicle tab, literally nothing really that you'd want to take. Helos, again, nothing. And air tab is the only big major update. You get B5s, and that's one big thing that Armor Deck can take B5s can take B5s. Excuse me, because B5s are really huge in terms of helping your team. Like on some games and some maps, an extra 2 sets of B5s is really helpful. Say you're playing Armored and you're in the mid on Bloody Ridge, and your teammate is like, "Hey, I need help on either the 2-pointer on the left, or I need help in the town." You can immediately buy, one of those B5s. So that's pretty important. Now the downside of playing Sovco is you lose 5 activation points, and for Armored that really doesn't matter too much, because you're just filling out your tank tab, your support tab, and your infantry tab. Nothing really else is filled out besides, I guess, your air tab. Everything else is kind of really lackluster. So those 5 activation points really don't matter too much, and I think that's a thing to consider, because it really doesn't matter. It doesn't really affect you. You can still take, the 2 cards of T90s. I think that's pretty useful in terms of just fighting those take-on-take battles. Excuse me, I'm yawning a lot. And you don't lose any really essentials, just besides the activation points. So I guess we can go into building a deck here. Sovco Armored. So Sovco Armored. At the start, I think in logistics is pretty much the first place you're going to go when you start building a deck. It's really simple. It's just like UAZ, and then maybe an Armored CV is probably the next best bet. You could take the T80 UK. I'm not going to say you shouldn't, but you can. I've never ever bought one in my life before. Yeah, I don't think there's a use to a tank that can shoot other tanks and still be 200 points. So I'll just take the cheap 151 because it's still armored, You could take a fob. Usually this is a team game deck, so we will take a fob, and we'll take a card of supplies. That should be enough for us. So in our infantry tab, it's pretty simple. It probably is going to be something like, I think I would do this. You get some cheap motor strokey and MTL BVs, and you get some upfitted motor strokey 90 and BMP3s. Now you're taking the BMP3 here. You're not taking the motor strokey upfitted. The BMP3 upfitted is pretty sweet. Excuse me. I guess I can't even. So, yeah, it's pretty sweet. You get some extra accuracy, extra stuff. You know, hardened. You get extra whatever. So I think it's worth it. I think the BMP3 is a really nice transport. Next, you probably want some Conkers, and you want Igla Team, and then probably Saprizi 85 in the BTRT, or you could take the base ones. I think I'll take the base ones. I don't really like these RPO squads. I don't think they're very good because they're a 5-man squad. They get panicked really easy. So on to support. So here's I guess where I could talk about my idea, and I think kind of elaborate to you guys why I think adding all self-propelled guns to armor decks. And here's why I think that. And there's some good counter arguments to it as well, but I think that currently armor decks aren't really played in terms of 3v3 games and 2v2 games, and there's obvious reasons is because those 2v2 maps and those 3v3 maps are mostly settled on infantry-based maps. Very few maps are considered to be armored favorable maps, which is a good argument. So this way, I think that at least buffing a small amount of armor decks, and I can't really say this and then be like armor decks is one really needing the buff, right? I can't just say that. There's a lot of decks that need buffs. I think airborne is really weak as a whole. I think motorized and mechanized are obviously the strongest decks right now. I think both those decks are really super strong in terms of what they can get, and I think that marine decks are highly underplayed in terms of the map pool and just utility wise. They're really bad. And I would like to take a full kind of rescale and resurface of those decks of Marines, Airborne, and Armored, and I want to look at these decks and say, what can we do to make people play this deck a little bit more, or play specialization a little bit more, and that's something that I've always wanted to do, but unfortunately, me and my buddies we can't spend that kind of time kind of reorganizing that much stuff with not too much support from the dev team. So that's kind of one thing that's really limited us. Like, we have a lot of great ideas in terms of what would be interesting, what would kind of remake some of these decks to make them a little bit more playable, and kind of lower the power curve down a little bit on these super strong decks like motorized and mechanized. But yeah, adding SPGs is just a small little buff to me in my eyes, allowing armor decks to have a little bit of fire support, not in terms of Smirch Mars and stuff like that, not in terms of that, just in terms of just fire support for good high-end SPGs. So we're looking at Mista Paladin, AS90, all those high-end, and even the Caesar. I guess I'd be fine letting the Caesar, even though it's not really tracked, I'd be fine letting it into armored for Eurocore as well. I think that's definitely fine, and I think that but if that were to happen, it would just be an overall buff. I don't think the downsides would be that it makes them a little bit more independent in terms, but I don't think that's much of an argument because if you're playing Sovco, which most armor decks, I guess that's the most popular one, is Sovco Armored is the most popular, and that activation point kind of maybe hinders that a little bit. And I don't think artillery is really allowing you to go be more independent. It's just giving you a better option to what you can currently take now, and it fits in real life as well because usually armored brigades are fitted with some sort of SPG support in terms of howitzers and stuff like that. So I think this is a good idea. I suggested it in my changelog, so hopefully maybe we'll see that in the future. But yeah, that's what I think should happen in terms of just a small buff. And again, I would like to look at other specializations of decks, and maybe add certain units. I'd have to look over each one in specifically, and kind of add units, and maybe take out some units that shouldn't be there. But that takes a lot of time, and it's not a guarantee. Everything I put on the list is not a full guarantee that it's going to go into the game. So it's kind of, do I want to, maybe not. But onto the deck. So for the rest of the deck here, pretty much we're just going to be filling it out. In terms of armored, you have some great choices of A. You have all the available A options for USSR, besides the motorized ones. You have the good ones, I guess. So I'll take 2 cards of Tunguska's most of the time. Now, back when the longbow was still a problem, when it was 3 cards, I saw a lot of people, taking Tunguska, and I was always taking Tunguska. I've never used the 85-point Tunguska because that extra range versus longbows and other attack heals is very vital. And I think in terms of armored decks, you cannot let your tanks get shot at by helos. That's one thing you cannot do. That's why we took the card of man pads. Usually I will never take man pads, but in armor decks you kind of have to take them because they're so you can use them in cool spots, cool places, and kind of make sure you have a strong A net. And having a net with a armor deck is your most important thing. You don't want your tanks to get sniped whatsoever. So 2 books, 2 Tunguskas, 2 cards is probably your best bet in terms of just solid A net and upvetted, because you don't want them to miss their missiles. Missing could be crucial in terms of deciding a tank battle, because if there's a longbow that pops up and shoots you with 2 Hellfires and you miss, your tank's gonna be dead. And I guess you could say that's bad micro or stuff like that, but it does happen in terms of RNG. You do lose a lot of units due to RNG sometimes in the game. So we eliminate as much as we can in terms of RNG by upvetting our Tunguskas, and we get 2 cards because I don't think we could take the 55-point Spag. That's an option as well. I could actually see that. I could see taking this upvetted probably. Yeah, we'll try it out. But the 3, that's kind of scary, because unless we do like 2 cards of Tunguskas and then this, because 3 is like really low in terms of A, and usually in team games you're going to be calling out a lot of stuff and they're going to go long games. So maybe it's worth doing something like this. I do 2 cards of books, but now that I think about it, you don't really need it. I think 3 of it is probably what you need. So yeah, this looks interesting. Oh man, sorry, I'm OCD. I have to have these in a certain way. And then I always like having some fire support in my deck, and I think peons are pretty sweet in terms of fire support, and we do have a fob to use. So if we need more availability, activation points, we can cut it out. Tanks. This is a good juicy part of the deck. We can look at tanks and we can have a lot of options. And here, I guess this is another very discussed topic about tank balance in terms of T55 and T62s. And I guess I can talk about that a little here. I know this video might be a little long, but it's honestly just kind of like a podcast to me, kind of. But tanks right now in terms of USSR are really in a weird spot, because in comparison to Blue 4 tanks, they're really bad. In terms of price, they're not priced effectively, they're not useful, there's just a lot of bad choices, and no one ever takes those choices because they're overshadowed by the bigger brother. The T72 line is probably the biggest brother of there. But T62s, T55s, they're all slow, their accuracy is poor, and they're just not worth it. And if you look at the other hand, I know comparing Red 4 tanks to Blue 4 tanks is kind of bad, because the Leopard series is so cost effective and they're so good for the price that you can't really compare those, because it's just comparing an F1 car to a a really, fucking clown car or something. It's really bad. So, um, I wish there was a way. There's some changes in the works for tanks. I will say that, but I don't I don't have hopes for any type of tank rebalance in terms of Russian tanks. I think buffing Russia in particular, making some tanks a little bit better would be interesting, but not a full buff, because I think Red 4 is already in a very good spot at the moment in terms of competitive play. So I guess that's about it. So tanks we can take, right? So there's a couple of mainstay tanks. It's like the T-72A. You're not really going to take the T-72A over the T-64A, because if we look at the stats here, we can see that the gun, there's a big difference in the gun. We get 15% more accuracy on the T-72A, 1 more AP, 2 less rounds per minute, but that extra 15% accuracy is pretty huge. 30% accuracy for a 50-point tank is terrible. It's really awful. It should be like a 20-point tank or something. But the T-64A is just awful. No one. There's no reason to take it, because even in armored, it's still like, I don't even know the accuracy. The accuracy is probably even awful at elite. And then we lose 2 frontal armor when we take the T-64A, but we gain 5 kilometers, which is not really noticeable. So for the 5 points, the T-72A is definitely better than that tank. But we can look at the others. I guess the next tank would be at the same price point, would be the T-55 AM2, which we lose on the gun. We lose 5% accuracy, 20% stabilizer. The T-55 gains 1 more AP, so it's at 15 AP. Same rate of fire, 1 less HE on the T-55 because it's not 125 millimeter. And we lose 3 frontal armor on the T-55, and we lose 10 kilometers per hour. But we gain a ATGM missile, which is pretty lackluster in terms of just weaponry in general. 17 AP, 40% accuracy, not that great. So for the same price, it's definitely not really what you want. Like, you're not going to be shooting other tanks with this T-55, because, I mean, it's not very good. Yeah, I just don't like T-55s at all. So I guess there's not any other tanks we can compare at 55 points, and not even really at 50. There isn't any other 50-point tanks. I guess we can compare the T-62 M1 or MI, I'm not too sure, versus the T-72A. So the T-62 is 50-point tank. It has 2200 meter range instead of the 2100 meter range of the T-72A. It has 5 less accuracy, 15 less stabilizer, 1 more AP, 1 less HE, 1 less rounds per minute, rate of fire, 3 less frontal armor, and 20 kilometers less speed. So for 5 points, we're getting 5% accuracy. We're getting a package deal here in terms of just cost effectiveness. So this is kind of what I'm saying when you point out, the big brother, the T-72A big brother is always overshadowing the smaller tanks, and there should kind of be a reason for you to take these other tanks. Like, I think some of these tanks should have different differences in terms of stats. So you might want to take one over the other in terms of your playstyle. But if I'd be here pretty much all day talking about tanks and stuff, so we're just going to get on with it. We're going to take the T-72A at Elite, at 12 of them. Next is the T-80. The T-80 is actually a really beast tank at Elite. It gets that extra 32% accuracy. 9 rounds per minute, 16 AP, 65 points. It's pretty sweet. So we'll take one at Elite. Next is probably the B1. I don't know if I should kind of speed up or slow down with the video. I know I went through that quick, so I don't know what exactly people want in terms of I don't want people to sit here for an hour and watch a video and be bored about me talking about stuff. And I also don't want to be quick and overrush things that people might want to know something about. So I guess that's kind of a difference between trying to be entertaining, I guess not really entertaining, but informative, and not informative to the point where it's really boring. So, yeah, I don't know, but I'll take my time on this video, and if you guys want something a little more sped up in terms of time-wise, just let me know, and I can kind of speed up things a little bit and kind of not, you know, talk my ass off here. So, we look at the T-80, right, and we can compare it to these other tanks. I guess we can compare it to this one first of all. Now, this is the worst tank on Earth, this T-72M. I think this tank is awful. And here's, like, just comparison, I think that it's not worth the stats, I guess. But at Elite, it might be okay. So the T-72M has 2100 meter range, 40% accuracy, 20% stabilizers, 18 AP, 4 HE, and 7 rounds per minute, and it's got 12 frontal armor. So it's not too bad. Short range, low accuracy, kind of a low-ish rate of fire. I guess 7's about the medium, and it's okay. But 2100 meter range and low accuracy is kind of the thing that's really killing it. Compared to the T-80, the T-80 has 2275, so max range. Same accuracy, 10% more stabilizer, so we're looking at 30%. And then 2 less AP, so it's shooting at 16, and 9 rounds per minute, so 2 more than the T-72M. We're also looking at 1 more frontal armor and 10% more speed, or excuse me, 10 more kilometers in terms of speed. I don't really count fuel and autonomy as a kind of a way to base off stats, because I don't really like doing that. I don't think anyone should base the price of a vehicle based on autonomy. I honestly think autonomy and fuel should just be equalized in terms of all across the board. That would make things a lot easier in terms of just... I don't know if pricing goes into... I hope not. But anyway... we're also looking at medium optics for the T-72M, so I guess I should count optics as well. And I might have missed a couple things on optics in the past. Okay, not really. I didn't really miss too much in terms of optics. I was kind of scared. Okay, so back on topic. So the tank difference is pretty, I wouldn't say substantial, but the 2 rounds per minute is really crucial, and the 1 extra frontal armor for the same price, and the gun range is also a thing. 2 less AP, yeah, you'll be shooting at, you know, the enemy tank will be shooting 1 more, because if you didn't know, again, 175 meter range equals 1 more AP, and also 5% more accuracy. If you didn't know that, that's how range works. So the enemy, when you're shooting at 2100 meter range versus a 2275 meter range tank, the enemy's going to get that extra bonus shooting at you. So that's one thing you kind of want to factor in when you're using 2100 meter tanks. But yeah, this T-80 is a beast at Elite. It's got that extra accuracy, so it's also a good force fighter because 9 rounds per minute is a really great thing. So that's why we'll take it there. Next is the T-72B1. Now this was buffed last patch. And I'm still kind of disgusted on why the T-72B is 95 points, a 10-point difference. When I guess I won't get into the argument between that because there's so many different arguments in terms of